mean, it wasn't like turbulence. It was sort of like turbulence, but you knew you'd hit something. And at that point, nobody knew what it was because the plane was still, at that point, it was still going like, up a little bit. And the lady sitting next to me, I was in the middle seat. I was an 18B, so I was, the exit rows in that plane are 10 and 11, so I was 7 rows behind the emergency exits. So I couldn't see the wing. I could just see sort of straight out because I was in the middle seat. And she looked out the window and she looked back to me. She said, "Oh my God, the engine's exploded and there's flames and smoke pouring out of the engine." And at which point, and she said, I've talked to her since then, she said that I was very calm. I think I was in shock, but she said I was very calm. So but she said that I said, well, it's probably not a big deal. They fly these planes with one engine all the time. Probably more than we know, and we're going to go to Newark. Newark's on the other side of the Hudson River, so and that's what I thought for the longest time. Well, the longest time, it seemed like forever. But because at that point the plane had started to turn, as you've seen in the reenactment, so it had stopped going up at that point, sort of leveled out, and was turning back. And I thought, yeah, we're going over there. And I even mentioned, this kind of stinks, but now we're going to have to get a new flight. I'm going to be late getting home. Another pain in the butt. And it seemed like an awful long time, but it was probably about 10 seconds. And you realize the people on the other side of the plane were saying, "We don't have engines over here either." And then just like that, it hit you. There was no sound in that airplane at all.
1 and 1 is 2.
What's that?
1 and 1 is 2.
1 and 1 is 2. And all you could hear was the wind sort of whipping by the, it sounded like wind. And it was very quiet on the plane. I mean, people were whispering to each other, but people weren't screaming, people weren't yelling. There was no yelling or screaming of any kind. There were a couple of children that were sitting, one row behind us, and it was a family of 4 actually, and the other 2 were sitting farther back, but the 6-year-old girl was crying, and you could hear her. But other than that, it was real quiet. Nobody came on and said anything, and I was really annoyed because, at that point you could tell we were starting to descend, but I mean, if you didn't know anything was wrong, you could have just got up and walked around because the plane never broke level. It wasn't going back and forth or up and down. It just was, coming down. So I kept thinking, the captain's going to come on and say, passengers were going to Newark or whatever, because I could see LaGuardia out the window. At that point, we had sort of leveled out, and I guess we were over the Bronx, headed down towards Upper Manhattan and Lower Manhattan. I could see LaGuardia out my window. I knew we weren't going back there. So it seemed, like I said, it seemed like a long time, but